Head Shop It here. Today I got 3 RPGs you should own if you're an old school gamer. Number 1, Empire of the Petal Throne. I know what you're thinking, Tecmo, but no. Empire of the Petal Throne was written right after OD&D came out, and it's a kind of a complete version of OD&D. There's no references to chainmail. There's none of the ambiguous rules as far as damage goes or everything. It's very clearly laid out. But the main thing about this is because M.A.R. Barker was one of the guys in Dave Arneson's group, you know, they're from the same area, you see a lot of Dave Arneson rules that he preferred saved in this game that didn't make it to OD&D or that got cut and didn't end up in AD&D. Things like re-rolling your hit points every level, double damage on a 20, saving throws if you make your save, not taking any damage, the damage spread rule or rollover rule where, you know, if you kill one monster, any excess damage, you know, above his hit points will go to the next monster of the same group, so you can attack big groups more quickly, stuff like that. So all those rules are preserved here in this book. In addition, you could use it as a reference for OD&D, just kind of procedurally for things like movement and combat, and he even goes through the examples on disabling and dealing with traps in games without thieves. In addition, there's extra stuff that you can use straight into your game. Arena combat, he's got a fiefdoms, divine intervention rules, plus, of course, tons of weird monsters and weird treasure that you can just throw directly into your OD&D or basic game without really any conversions, because it's all right here. But this is number 1, Empire of the Petal Throne. It's available in RPG Now. I'm pretty sure I'll put the link if I can find it. There's 2 versions. There's an older called manuscript version, which is from right in 74, like just a couple months after OD&D was published. I have them both. It's not necessary. It's probably just better to get the published version. The differences are pretty minor, and this version has more stuff in it. Let's get it. Number 2 is Runequest. This is a first edition. I think I paid $2.98 for it. And this is my second edition, which I had as a kid. It's still got the brown paper grocery bag that I wrapped it up in so I could read it in class in high school. But the second edition book it's very similar as far as the text goes, but this is typeset. It's much neater. The guys who wrote Runequest were D&D gamers. It's no surprise considering how early it was written. And it also preserves some early rules from D&D that didn't make the cut. Like their strike rank system is their diceless initiative system. It's a variant or a version of another similar system that came out in the Judges Guild Ready Ref sheets called, I think, Attack Priority or Weapon Priority, which itself was an expansion of the rules that were in Chainmail. Basically, longer weapon attacks first. This game adjusts for size and dex slightly. It also integrates spells and missile fire in there. In addition, the hit locations from this game, they're pretty close to being the ones in Blackmore. So it's the same procedures, the same concepts from the Blackmore supplement ended up in here, just rolling d20 instead of percentage dice like Blackmore did. But one of the strengths of this game that's usable in your own game is how it deals with religions, or what they refer to as cults. Every cult write-up has a format that's identical from every cult, and rather than what you would typically see in a D&D, like, okay, here's the god, here's what he looks like, here's his weapons that he carries, or even in later editions, like, okay, here's what the god, the cleric of this particular god, what spells he uses or what weapons he uses. The write-ups in here are written more from the perspective of, I'm a regular guy and here's a church of whatever god of light, you know, what's in it for me? So you'll see the lists. Okay, this is what lay membership, and then the initiate, which is the second level, more dedicated to one particular church, to God. And then there's the rune lords and rune priests, which are similar, like a paladin. The rune lord is like a fighter with a little bit of extra magic power. The rune priest is kind of like a cleric, but he's more like a magic user because he's limited on his physical abilities. But in every level, it's what are you required to have to join? What are your expectations to stay a member? Like you have to go to the church every holy day or contribute a certain money or tithe or whatever. But it also lists what are you going to get from the church. So, you know, these guys will ransom you if you ever get captured. They'll teach you secret spells or secret skills or a variety of other things benefits that you get. So it's the layout is much more gameable even at low levels because you pretty much have to join one cult or the other to learn most of the spells. So low level stuff and not necessarily, hey, I'm dedicating my life to Thor, but just kind of the regular guys in the pews sort of perspective. And so that makes it more readily available to use. And one of the things also that it does is, in addition to every cult or every god has its own unique spells. Maybe just one, maybe just a handful. But if a god is friends with another god, then he can use that god's special spells, sometimes even their special skills. So when you have the write-up, it not only lists the kind of the structure of the church, but also kind of, in a sense, creates a pantheon one god at a time. And because the gods aren't restricted on who they can be friends with, so, you know, your god of death might be friends with a troll god, or might be your god of nature might be friends with an elf god. The pantheons are the edges of them are fuzzier. Okay, so you have groups of gods, but then there could be overlap with other groups of gods. It's not like when you would typically think in D&D where you have, okay, here are my spheres or whatever, domains or whatever they called it. You know, every pantheon's got to have a god of light. Every pantheon's got to have a god of death. You don't really need that because you can borrow gods from other pantheons, and it creates them more organically and more confusingly and more like what you would see in like Romans, where the Romans and the ancient Greeks, even to some extent, would just kind of borrow gods from everywhere, wherever they conquered, and you would end up with these weird pantheons, you know, of mixed origin. So that's a good thing about Runequest. One other way that you can see the advantages of it is this one, the Cult of Terror, which is their evil cult book. My baby just walked in. You need to be quiet, okay? In the evil cult book, it lists the cults in the same format, so that, you know, there's advantages to join the cult other than, okay, I'm a crazy evil cultist, so I'm going to worship the evil god. You know, there's actual reasons why you'd want, and the variety in here is pretty nice. You know, you've got a sort of generic chaos god that you can worship in your own basement. It doesn't have any sort of organized structure, but it still has some benefits for, you know, being loyal. It's got vampire cults where you could join just to keep off the menu. There's a god that's been killed, and this members are trying to bring him together, put him back together again. Cindy, wait right there. And there's also like a giant bat where they ride it around on the giant bat, and they go from village to village. When they land, you know, the villagers pretty much have to either, you know, have to donate to the church, or else they'll be donated to the buffet line. So it's a cool way of setting up evil religions such that they're not kind of cookie cutter, you know, evil temple in the middle of the dungeon with no real backstory. So it gives the things reasons to exist that are more logical. The third game is this guy, Bushido. I've been a big fan of this game and been promoting it for years. This game isn't like the other two. It's not really it doesn't really have much to do with original D&D. It's a class skill hybrid game. It's got a comprehensive skill system, just like RuneQuest, but it's also classes and levels. And the way it divides it up is that the skill represents your training. You can only increase it by training, whereas the class and the level represent experience. And it's a D20 roll. If you have a 50% skill chance, that means you roll 10 or less. And then if the skill is part of your class list, then you add your level to that chance. So if you're a third level and you have a 50% skill, it's the 10 plus 3, and then you need to roll a 13 or less. Kind Combat is similar in scale to D&D. You roll, you hit, and your damage is between D6 and D10. Characters start out with hit points equal to their con. So if you're looking to add skills to D&D or just want to kind of look at how it's been done, but this is a good example. But in addition, there's tons of stuff in here, rules that you don't normally see in games, especially games of this era. There's a battle system, kind of like War Machine from the basic line, but it's also got rules for fighting in the battle if you're just a regular soldier. So depending on whether your side's winning or losing or what's happening, whether you're acting courageously or cautiously, you roll on the table, see what happens. It could be simple as, okay, you kill 10 of his, maybe not 10, but a couple of his guys, you collect their heads of just regular soldiers, or you could fight a champion, or if you're losing the battle or have lost the battle, then you could be surrounded, have to fight your way out to survive. And at the end of the battle, you compare how many rounds you were cautious with how many rounds you were courageous, roll on a table, and you could either get a reward like a cool sword or some land added to your fiefdom, or you could be asked to do the honorable thing or some other punishment. So that's in here. Their fief rules are in here, or domain rules for your fiefdom, because it's more set to be more civilized area, not like building a castle in the wilderness. There's a fief generation where you generate what's in your domain. So you roll on the hexes and see, you could have a school or a ruined castle or a monastery or a shrine to some god or something like that built into the fief. So it gives a nice variety to your terrain other than just monster lairs. It's got rules for downtime jobs. So if you're a warrior, a bushi, then you could be a bodyguard and you roll to see what happens. Maybe nothing happens, you just collect your money. Maybe you have to fight a guy. Maybe if you're a yakuza, you could be running a gambling den. And one of your clients could get unruly. If you're a ninja, you can go out on little mini ninja missions and do your ninja stuff. It's meant to just be a quick couple rolls before each session or at the end of each session to kind of catch the characters up, give them a little bit of extra cash. It's got cool treasure tables in it too. Rather than just the usual, golds, gems, and jewelry, you've got art, trade goods, and things like that. And the treasure's not listed as total value, so you're not like finding 200 gold pieces worth of art. Instead, the roll determines how much per pound, essentially, that particular product is worth. So a low quality art would be in coppers. Exquisite art would be listed in gold pieces per pound. So there's a variety of treasure that you can find other than the usual just piles of cash. Lastly, it's got social rules, which kind of you expect in a Japanese game. And instead of just having one list, you start at the bottom at peasant and you work your way up and eventually you're king. It keeps track of two separate statuses. Your status within an organization, your membership, or within any group, and you could be multiple groups. And a group could be anything like a swordsman school or a noble family, or of the leadership of a village even. And you keep track of your membership as you work your way up the corporate ladder. And then in addition, it keeps track of your group itself and its overall standing within the game world. So you can improve your personal status either by climbing the corporate ladder and improving your status within a powerful organization, or by doing things that improve the prestige of your organization. So if you're a member of a swordsman school and you go and defeat the champion of another swordsman school, then you can improve the standing of your school, which in turn improves your standing as a member of it. I think that's it for... I wrote a review on Dragon's Foot in the review section a couple years ago. You probably have to search for it, where I basically just list, for this, things that are readily usable in a D&D game, straight out of here if you're not interested. Be warned, if you do get this, is that the rules are terribly written. They're among the worst. Maybe Aftermath is a little bit worse. It's not that the rules are complicated. Well, they are complicated, but not outrageously complicated. But they seem to want to use the most incomprehensible terms for everything and abbreviations for those terms. So, like I said, if you have a 50% skill, the number you need to roll is a 10 or less. Well, that 10 is referred to as your base chance of success. And they use the abbreviation BCS, and it's BCS is all over the rules. even though BCS isn't the number you roll, because you add your level to it, maybe or not, you know, it's still BCS plus this and BCS that. And when there's so many abbreviations, you lose track of what they mean, the FIS, and stuff like that, that it's hard to keep track of. So, but it's worth, I think, puzzling through it. I actually, mentioning FIS is one thing that I forgot. In a lot of skill games, you have a problem where characters tend to become more similar because, you know, as the people who start with a high skill, their skill doesn't go up as fast as those who start with the low skill. So any gaps in starting characters tends to disappear over time. But in this game, they've kind of worked a way around that by creating what they call freely improvable skills, which doesn't even mean what it says. But so each character gets a number of skills that they can pick as their specialty, and it's 4 or 5, depending on some stats. And they don't have to be class skills either. But those skills will increase at twice the rate, or basically take half as long to train them up as a regular skill. So it means that if one of your specialty skills is Yari, so you're a spearman, then you're going to be a better spearman than all the other characters, even if you're all going to spear school at the same time. So it allows you to create a character in a skill system that's different than the other characters and maintain that difference throughout the life of the character. But that's it. I think it's on RPG now. I'll check it before I put this video up, and I'll put a link to it if it is. Generally, the Fantasy Games Unlimited, I didn't even say that. They're generally pretty reasonable about the prices they charge for the PDFs, so it shouldn't be too bad. It comes with a map of Japan with what has to be the tiniest hexes of any hex map I've ever seen. I mean, they can't be like 3 millimeters. But so you pretty much need a magnifying glass. You know, we would always zoom into the area we were playing in, you know, when we played this years ago. I'm not sure if the map is included in the PDF. Anyway, hopefully it is. So that's my 3 games. If you want a well-rounded collection of old school games, these 3 are the ones to get. Check out, see how people do other things, for some ideas if you're adding rules for your own game. Anyway, I'll be back next week with another video, and that's it. Hold on. She's been here the whole time, so she's going to have to say goodbye. Say goodbye, Sydney. All right. I'll see y'all later.